is this serving me in my life anymore? Maybe it did have a place and a time in my life in college or in my 20s or 30s, but is this really helping me today become the version of myself that I want to become? And there's no better way to discover that than just by experimenting with the break yourself.
Wits and Weights community, welcome to another episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. Today, we're talking about living an alcohol-free life with Karolina Rzadkowolska, an alcohol-free empowerment expert. We are unpacking the realities and the myths around alcohol consumption, its impact on our physical and mental health, and whether it's actually serving you. You'll learn about effective strategies for changing your drinking habits, managing social dynamics when you're not drinking, and exploring alternatives to alcohol for stress relief. Karolina will help us explore the concept of aligning our lifestyle choices with our personal goals and how giving up alcohol can lead to greater self-discovery and purpose. Karolina helps intuitive women ditch alcohol and discover their greatest purpose. She's worked with thousands of clients through her programs to change their drinking habits and unleash a new level of health, happiness, and potential to go after their biggest dreams. She's the best-selling author of the book Euphoric, Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You. And her work has been featured in the Huffington Post, the Sunday Post, Pop Sugar, Real Simple, Elite Daily, and multiple TV shows. Karolina's passionate about helping you discover what really makes you happy outside of a beverage and design a life you love. She would love to hear from you at euphoricaf.com. Karolina, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Philip, for the warm welcome. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, me as well. We were talking before we recorded that this is a kind of a unique topic for me and my audience because the only time we usually talk about alcohol is in the context of how many calories they have, or like make sure you track and watch what you drink, and maybe alternatives and substitutions. Although we do talk about the mind-altering effects that then can lead to other certain decision-making. I want to talk about your personal background in this because you wrote that you used to think of alcohol as a ticket to having fun, feeling glamorous, and a treat I deserved after a long, hard day, which I think many people can relate to that statement. So what was the turning point for you when you realized alcohol was not serving you anymore?
Absolutely. And I love to talk to health conscious people because it's oftentimes that one incongruency, right? We can do everything healthy and then alcohol just gets this pass. And I, found myself there into my mid 30s. I had partied very hard when I was in college. So that's kind of where I picked it up, right? I picked up drinking as a habit, but it almost doesn't matter what you do or where you are. Every adult at some point, for the most part, picks up drinking into their habits, whether it's at work or through college or high school or whatnot. Anyway, I was over partying then, over drinking then. But as I grew up, I got more into health and mindfulness. And so drinking became something I compartmentalized. So I would do all the healthy things. All week I would, drink my green juices, go to yoga classes, eat vegetables, try to read at night. But alcohol still played a very heavy role every weekend, where basically I thought I was unwinding. I thought I was letting off some steam, hanging out with friends, socializing. Yet every single Monday morning, I woke up feeling like a shell of myself. I felt like I made progress during my healthy week and then took 5 steps backward every single weekend. I felt lower mentally, emotionally. I felt like this depression. I felt not very motivated to go after my goals. And I just thought that I had to get stricter and stricter with how much I was drinking. So I was on this constant quest to drink less. And I had a lot of rules around that. And this cycle repeats itself for over 7 to 8 years of just living in this like constant, I want to drink less, I want to be healthier. And yet somehow this thing keeps happening to me every weekend. I was tired of it, honestly. My drinking wasn't what you would call traditionally problematic with a rock bottom story.
Mhm.
I literally was drinking less since I was in college, but it was still because I was so aligned with a healthy lifestyle. And as I got older, 1 or 2 drinks would literally give me a hangover or a headache that next day. It's like it didn't even matter how little I drank, I still felt worse for wear the next day. And I think that's something that we don't often admit to ourselves. Like, nobody actually wakes up the next day after drinking feeling like $1 million, right? Like, alcohol has certain biological and toxic properties that our body has to detox and absorb and process through, and it changes how we feel the next day. And I wasn't like, I was feeling that, but I just didn't think any other people were. I thought I was just someone who just couldn't figure out this alcohol thing in my life. And finally, I heard of dry January. And to me, that was like this release and this permission that I finally gave myself to explore what a break from alcohol could do. Because this whole drinking less wasn't working. It was still giving me so much strain and stress, so much mental gymnastics, like what's the rule today? How am I
Mm.
going to let myself down when I actually do break it 9 times out of 10? But dry January was like this, okay, I can actually just get some space away from alcohol. And I never thought I could do that before because it always seemed like there was the social pressure to drink, and it's like, well, what are you going to say to people if you're not going to drink? Do I have to admit that I have a problem? Do I have to start going to these meetings? And so I kept like putting it off, thinking I wasn't allowed to really do it until I heard of dry January. And that was like the first time I could publicly just be like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm taking a break from alcohol, and it allowed me to fall in love with a completely new lifestyle. Every single morning I woke up with so much more energy, so much deeper sleep. I mean, the sleep got so much better. It was incredible. I also started waking up feeling so much more proud of myself, so much more self love, where the decisions I made the day before were setting me up to succeed the next day and not like I was 5 steps behind, right? I was waking up on the right side of the bed instead of the wrong side of the bed. I started to cultivate new discoveries into what made me happy. And I noticed that my mood was actually really elevating just naturally. I was enjoying hiking more and just being with family and friends. Like my mood was going up. And February comes along, and I don't yet believe that I'm allowed to remain a person who doesn't drink. Like, I'm just like, well, socially, people are going to expect it. So I drink a few times in February, and the contrast is so big.
Mm.
One or two drinks completely ruins my sleep, but what I really notice is how much it ruins my mood. I literally have a drink or two, and then an hour later, I get frustrated, cranky. I'm picking fights with my husband. And that was like the wake up call I really needed, because to me, I thought I was drinking to have fun. I thought I was drinking for the pleasurable quality. I thought I was doing it to elevate my mood. And when I saw so starkly that it was literally ruining my mood and I was so much happier in January without it, that's when my mindset really shifted. So I committed to another break at that point, which actually turned into 5+ years later that I'm here at today, that I remain a non drinker. And everything in my life has snowballed and changed so much. Not only did my physical health change, my emotional health, my spiritual health, but I also recognized why I was really drinking, like the existential reason. I couldn't wait for the weekend every week. My job couldn't go fast enough in order to get off, and I couldn't wait to finally unwind with some alcohol. And I didn't realize how unfulfilled I was with my work week. And so instead of putting up with that and using alcohol to numb that, I literally changed everything. I decided to launch a business and to leave my day job and to do what I'm so
Mm.
passionate about, so I feel fulfillment every single day. And so instead of that immediate gratification I was going for at the end of a work day or the end of the Friday or whatever, I now feel that like long-term fulfillment on a daily basis, which is what I'm so passionate about sharing with people.
I mean, you've sold me just with your story, Carolina. It's such, and you've answered all my questions already, but no, not really. I love so many of the parallels here. There's definitely parallels with other things that are people find triggering to them, whether it's food or something else that kind of is tied into something else that we're covering up. And you mentioned you didn't have to go through this rock bottom to get there necessarily, but I like that you did the experiment with the dry January that gave you the contrast, because what sticks out to me is the need for community here oftentimes, right? The relatedness to other people, that there's such peer pressure, if you want to call it, with alcohol, whereas other things like foods, I don't know, candy, for example, if you want to stop eating candy, nobody's going to get on you for that, right? But it's like, oh, you don't drink? Why not, right? Like, I bet you get that question a lot. So some things you said about compartmentalizing it, and I don't know if you use the word, but I'm using the word rationalizing, right? We do that, lying to ourselves. Let's admit that. The interesting thing is, I know what you're saying as far as these symptoms, and I think everyone has different versions of those, right? Like, I know that if I had surgery recently, so I couldn't drink for like 2 weeks. I occasionally will have one drink a week, but just even not having had it at all, you could see the differences. Even though I'm dealing with all this other stuff, you could just sense this greater sense of clarity and other symptoms that mysteriously go away. Okay, so I want to focus on the positive first and then get into some of the other things you mentioned, because by removing something that's fine, you've now added in opportunities to your life, right? What opened up for you now that you became alcohol free?
Yeah, such a good question. I was living in such a place of mediocrity before, and all of that was just fine. Like, I was living a just fine life.
Mm.
I had my job, I had my marriage, I had my, vacations once a year for 2 weeks, right? And I really didn't believe that I was allowed to paint outside of those lines. And I think going alcohol free was like, first, it was just the little things like, okay, I'm not drinking this Friday. So what do I do on a Friday night? Like I literally drank every weekend for a decade. Like, that was
Mm.
my source of fun. And so I had to kind of rediscover what pleasure and fun looked like in my life. So I started exploring new activities. I started going out and doing things I wouldn't normally do. I did paddleboard yoga. I went to writers' workshops. I went to Zumba classes, just totally getting outside of my comfort zone. And I think that really brought me in touch with all the mental time and energy you also release from not drinking alcohol. Started really getting me in touch with my deeper creativity, my deeper intuition, and my deeper passions. And when I really got so strongly motivated to recognize how incredibly life changing it was to change my relationship with alcohol, I knew I wanted to share it with other people. In the past, though, alcohol and just my past limiting beliefs would have told me, you're not an entrepreneur. You can never write a book. In fact, I had tried to write a book for over a decade. I used to write a lot when I was
Mm.
a kid and an adolescent. I would write little poems, short stories, journal a lot. And as soon as I start drinking in college, my writing just completely dries up. But the desire to write doesn't go away. So I keep having these New Year's resolutions every year. This is the year I'm going to write a book, right? I'd always wanted to be an author. And I would write maybe the first week of January, and then it was completely like scrapped to the side, and I never worked on it. Alcohol didn't give me the creativity or the discipline in order to do that. It was so much easier to open a bottle of wine than write the next great American novel, right? And so I continued to choose what was easy and my comfort zone over and over and over instead of push myself. So just allowing myself to push myself outside my comfort zone, find these new senses of creativity and passion, but also kind of change some of these limiting stories because I never thought I would be happy without alcohol. I kept telling myself a story that's not like I needed it, like I was dependent on it in some kind of addictive or biochemical way, but that like it brings pleasure to my life. It's fun. I'm never going to have fun without it. And that limiting story made me feel so stuck. And so I never thought I would be so happy without alcohol, but I was. And so I was like, well, wait a minute. Maybe some of those other stories I'm telling myself, like I couldn't be an entrepreneur or I couldn't quit my job or I couldn't write a book, are also BS. So it started expanding my sense of possibility so much. And I just got such a fire of confidence, courage. Like we just talked about, everyone really assumes you're going to drink, and most people do drink. And so when you go alcohol free, you build your courage muscle like no other. Just the simple fact of saying no, thank you, or explaining it to people or whatever, like you're the odd one out in that moment. And that courage muscle that you're
Mm.
building to align your life to your values, to what works for your well being, and not just doing what, other people are doing to try to fit in or to please anyone else, it builds so much strength and courage within yourself. And so I think it's like this confluence of gifts that you get when you go alcohol free. Not only do you get that clarity, do you get that time and energy back, I got that confidence, that courage, that also rediscovery of what my real passions were instead of just outsourcing fun to a beverage. And I just got so excited to say, like, why couldn't I go after my dream life? And my story is not an anomaly. Most of the clients I work with, and a lot of women I've heard from who've just read my book and stuff, they ditch alcohol. And it's like that fire within them is completely ignited to go after their deeper passions. I know people who've written books themselves, launched businesses, started nonprofits, moved somewhere beautiful because they've always wanted to live there. It's just an incredible way of activating that deeper desire within of what we want instead of settling for the status quo that we have.
I love the vision and the dream you paint, which is where I wanted to go first, because then we kind of reverse engineer back to it. And I am going to ask you a little bit about science along the way if it's something you want to get into. But you talked about the courage muscle, unlocking the fire, having time, energy, clarity, all of these things, which is amazing. And I wonder if some people are listening thinking, huh, is that the thing is that one, at least one of the things in my life, besides others they may be aware of, that if I just stopped as an experiment to see what would happen, would all of a sudden unlock? Why do you think that is? So that's the big question is, I guess, physiologically or otherwise, because you said you weren't really addicted or it wasn't a dependence. Is that true, really? Or maybe you were a little bit?
I will definitely argue for emotional dependence, and I will say that
Okay.
most people in my city also have that same emotional dependence, right? And I
Yeah.
think most of us are kind of brainwashed into having an alcohol regularly in our lives,
Mm,
and usually it's a lot more than just the one drink a week like it is for you, right? It's like a few
yes,
drinks on Friday, Saturday, Sunday type thing.
it's true.
So that emotional, like I outsource so much to alcohol. I also grew up really shy and I'm introverted. So to me, alcohol was the secret to confidence and being able to
Mm,
socialize with people. So there's a lot of things I outsource to alcohol in that emotional way. And that's what I love doing with my clients is that a lot of times it isn't this deep, like I'm talking addiction as in like if you remove alcohol, the person's going to get sick, right? You're going to need to go to the
sure.
hospital. When it's emotional, though, it's all these just mindset associations we've formed over time, and all of those can be broken. All of those can be reframed and rewired into something different. And when someone finally feels, for example, confident on their own to socialize and they don't need a drink, what a powerhouse we've just unlocked. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But going back to your question about the science, why do I think this is? So, one really big reason is literally what alcohol does to our neurochemistry. And I didn't know any of this when I was drinking, so it's just was a huge mind blown kind of moment when I started learning more about it, but I could once I knew about it, see it when I like reflected back on drinking. So first of all, alcohol is a depressant. It will slow down our central nervous system and really kind of slow down our cells and our processing and stuff. And some people obviously enjoy that kind of numbing effect that happens
Mm,
when alcohol's in the way. But what happens that I didn't know is that our body is a miracle, right? We have these counteractive systems in our body, and so when this depressant is introduced, the body actually knows to release stimulants in response to it. And so the body releases cortisol, adrenaline, and dynorphin. Dynorphin is something that is basically the opposite of endorphins. It makes us feel very low and depressed in response to alcohol. Most of the time, this is released about or maybe like you'll feel it once the alcohol effect wears off. So it just depends on how much you drink. If you drink just one drink, you'll probably feel it like an hour later. If you drink all night, though, you might feel it in the morning, right? If you wake up at
mm,
4 a.m., like with the jolt, like how many people have had that kind of wake up call after drinking? It's literally like cortisol has just been totally released in your brain and your body. You might feel it the next day by just having anxiety or just being overly worried and just feeling just kind of behind on things as well. And what's really interesting about these stress hormones is that while alcohol, the actual, toxin of ethanol can be processed in our body quite fast, or not quite fast, but depends on how old you are, within a day or two. These stress hormones can actually live in our body a lot longer. So when I was drinking every weekend, but like not
mm,
drinking during the week, I actually was never experiencing my true mental state. I was always at the effect of those stress hormones, like circulating my body for longer. So we have the heightened stress hormones when we're drinking, but then also what alcohol does is lower a lot of our happiness neurotransmitters. So our GABA, serotonin, and dopamine go down. In fact, because alcohol does this high spike of dopamine in the brain, our brain is like, this isn't natural, right? So over time, it actually retracts the receptors that catch dopamine. So people who drink regularly have lower levels of dopamine, serotonin, and GABA in their brains. Again, this is just all the time, not just the second after drinking or anything like that. So you have the heightened stress hormones, the lowered happiness neurotransmitters. And to me, what that looked like in my life was just apathy. Like on a general day of the week, I just felt apathetic, pretty bored, a little stressed. Like that was just my bleh feeling, right? And then on a Friday, I could get excited to have a drink, to have that one little spike of dopamine I was so looking forward to. When I ditched alcohol and allowed my neurochemistry to rebalance, I noticed those stress hormones start to go down. Those neurotransmitters start to go up, and the littlest things start to make me feel so much more joy and happiness. They even have a word for it called the pink cloud. Now, the intense surge and the intensity of that might wane a little as you get used to it, but like the feelings I have of just well-being and joy are so much heightened as a non-drinker than as a drinker. So I think that's a huge component to it when we look at the science. There's a lot more, obviously. Good sleep, I know for anyone interested in health is so important. Just one glass of wine has been proven to reduce our REM sleep cycles from around the 5 to 6 tonight we could get down to just 1 or 2. I didn't know that either, right? So here I am. I'm a pretty big sleep fanatic. I was always making sure to clock in those 8 hours. I was getting the 8 hours, but my sleep was so fragmented, so poor, the quality, that I didn't understand why I was so exhausted, why I was always feeling so lethargic and stuff. And there's all these things that happen on a biological level. Like we could probably write a whole book just about that on alcohol of what it's doing. It's a toxin your body has to work overtime to process. It's also slowing down your metabolism at that same time because it has to process alcohol first. So all the things we ate that day aren't getting processed because we have to, you can't store alcohol in the body like that.
Sure,
So
yeah.
there's just so much going, I think, on a biological, neurochemical level. Even molecularly, they've tied anxiety to alcohol in our cells molecularly. And it's so interesting that we're learning more and more about this. And so it just starts to, really get the questioning. Not to say that everyone's got to quit drinking and it's this horrible thing, but it kind of allows us to have permission to not have to have the rock bottom or severe, severe problem, to just be like, wait a minute, is this serving me in my life anymore? Maybe it did have a place and a time in my life, in college or in my 20s or 30s, but is this really helping me today become the version of myself that I want to become? And there's no better way to discover that than just by experimenting with the break yourself.
So much in there. That was a way more comprehensive answer than I expected, and I love that because I immediately my mind immediately started going to the spiraling. Right, everything we do spirals into other things in our life, both positively and negatively. And for those listening who care about body composition, health, emotional health, mental health, everything, just imagine, just think of what Karolina talked about when you're messing with your cortisol, your adrenaline, when these hormonal effects last for days beyond the drinking. I mean, think about that, right? Most things are short term, days beyond the drinking. It is true that alcohol gets processed first. So now you're blunting the benefits you're getting from all your protein that you're trying to consume for your diet. And then the apathy and the poor sleep. And we know that poor sleep causes a slower metabolism and causes greater hunger. And that also leads to ill health effects. So at the end of the day, my question for people listening, and this is for you as well, you get this a lot, Karolina, is what rationalizations remain and how do we attack those? Because I hear a couple, right? One is that there are so-called benefits of alcohol, whether it's the resveratrol and red wine, antioxidants, all this. And I used to believe those as well. I used to have my red wine every day with dinner. And I was never a big drinker like you, but still, frequency wise, it was enough. And now I understand that there are really no upsides at all. According to the evidence, there's really no upsides to alcohol. And so that's one rationalization. The other is stress relief, right? Like I've had clients who were trying to limit our calories or trying to clean things up. And it's like, well, I have to have the alcohol. Well, really, do you? Is it a non-negotiable and then they get rid of it. And all of a sudden, oh my goodness, everything else got easier. I wonder why. So talk about all of those remaining rationalizations and how we can dispel those. And then we can move to like, all right, what do we do now?
Yeah, yeah. And there's that social element too, right? So
Yes.
there's just that belief that we have to be drinkers. So, with the first one, the health benefits, honestly, we were kind of duped. And it has a really similar history to like what happened with cigarettes. In the last like 5 to 7 to even 10 years or so, there's just been so many conclusive studies that show there is no health effect of alcohol. And any previous health effects that were tied were done by flawed studies. And so once you kind of weed those out and clean up that data, there is only life lost, only degenerative diseases, only more risk for cancer and cardiovascular. You'd have to drink I think 18 bottles of wine to get any of that resveratrol antioxidant effects that you want, right? And they actually can pinpoint it. There was a doctor back in 1991 who was the first person to say that alcohol is good for your heart. And that is literally, you could look and go back and see that in the 80s, more Americans drank soda with dinner than wine, which obviously soda isn't the best either. But, it's just so interesting to see compared to this huge consumption level that's changed in the last 30 years because alcohol essentially became a health beverage, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that is really, really just a good, not just wake up call, but like we can drink, we can have alcohol, you can have all the things in your life that might not be so good for you, but we need to know, we need to be informed of what that's doing to us. And so I think to call alcohol a health beverage for so long and to say it has so many benefits and this and this and this, that was wrong. And thank God now we're getting the new information. And then people can choose what they want to from that. For example, Canada just lowered its drinking limits to literally zero. Or if you want to, have a little risk, it's 2 drinks a week. I mean, think how different that
Mm.
is from, what we were saying, 7 or even 14 drinks a week. Like that is a lot of alcohol in the system, especially for a woman. Anything over that 7 drinks is actually considered heavy, risky drinking. So obviously we have those studies, and that that's a learning curve because for so long we've been taught that it is good for us or so. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of you can research. For women especially, the breast cancer risk goes up by 15% by just drinking 2 drinks a week. And, for me, that 2 drinks a week would have been nothing, right? So it's like, what's the point? And then you mentioned obviously the stress response. So this is obviously a big one. It actually becomes a habit where our brain literally gets the cue of, okay, it's time to drink. And we understand that there's going to be this reward of that stress release. And, it becomes a ritual in our lives. I
Mm.
actually think that the ritual is beautiful in the sense that we work all day, we're so productive, we're always on, we're taking care of all the things, we have so many responsibilities, and you get home and you pour a glass and you finally allow it all to melt away and just to relax. I think that is actually beautiful. It's just the ethanol in that drink isn't really relaxing you like you think. They once did that study, so we talked about the cortisol earlier, but they once did this study where they put brain nodes on people who just left work. And so everyone's a little stressed out. They're able to see their brain waves. It's all a little wonky. And they go to a bar or restaurant and everybody orders a drink. And all of a sudden the brain waves relax. They're nice and smooth. And the kicker here is that nobody actually received and drank the drink
Okay,
yet.
they just ordered it. Got it.
Right? So it's like we can
Yeah.
see the power of habit and the power of ritual on our brain to anticipate that relaxation. And honestly, one of the easiest ways to make a switch in order to still have the ritual without the negative side effects is mocktails and alcohol-free beverages. There's so many on the market these days. There's ones made especially for people who are health conscious or athletic, like Athletic Brewing, for example, that literally have the same taste and or quality of an adult beverage, but don't have any of that ethanol or negative side effects. And I have to say that like most people find that that placebo effect like that works like a charm. And it also really helps in the social occasions because we do have this huge ritual around drinking. We come together at birthday parties, at weddings, at funerals. I mean, literally any Wednesday of the week for a game night, whatever it is, alcohol is going to be around. And it's like, you mentioned earlier, would someone care if you stopped eating candy? Hopefully not. But for some reason, we're so fixated about what's in our cup.
Mhm.
And I think that like we can kind of start tearing that pressure down. And by having a more inclusive society where alcohol free drinks start to be more normalized, okay, you have the beer in your cup, I have the alcohol free beer. Who cares? Right? We're all socializing, we're all bonding. And so I think that's also a really beautiful way, not only to get that stress relief, there's so many other ways, obviously. We can
Mhm.
incorporate some more yin yoga or some breath work or meditation. Or my favorite is just taking a walk at sunset because it doesn't matter what problems I have in my life. Like they all seem super petty when I'm watching the beautiful, like grandeur of the universe explode in front of me during a sunset. So there's obviously a lot of other stress release techniques. But we have to be willing to experiment. We have to be willing to ask ourselves, what if alcohol actually isn't the best way to decompress my body? Because it's not doing that on a biological level whatsoever. What if I try these other things while I take a
Mm.
break and kind of learn and go from there? And then that social element too, I think the more people who are starting to not stand up and to say alcohol's bad, but just to encourage a world where not everybody has to drink at every occasion, where it's perfectly okay to choose the alcohol free option. We're starting to change that expectation too. And, it starts one person at a time, it starts with a ripple effect. Like I had a friend group that would totally have questioned why someone wasn't drinking a few years ago. No one would do that in my friend group now. Everyone's kind of
Mm.
aware enough to say everyone can choose their own way.
Hi, this is Allan. I just want to give a shout out to Philip Pape at Wits and Weights for his nutritional coaching. His coaching is based upon science, research, intellect, and wisdom. His coaching is safe, supportive, connecting, and it actually has helped reset my compass in terms of how I direct my health, the action steps I do, and really, really has helped me regain trust and belief in what my body can do and how my body can change.
I tell you, after this interview, I am definitely going to be talking more about this on this platform and others because I do think it's really important as a health issue as well as a social issue. And I know what you're talking about with rituals. When I'm in a fat loss phase, I cut out alcohol together anyway, just because I don't want the wasted calories, so to speak. And I will actually have a diet root beer sometimes in the evening as like my go-to because it has that flavor. And yeah, it's soda, but it's fine because it's not alcohol. And I get that. It basically replaces it without any harm. My wife's not much of a drinker, so I kind of don't have that pressure when we go to like family dinners or whatnot. But I found that alcohol free Guinness is delicious, right? And like it used to be that O'Doul's was the only option. So because what came to mind earlier for at least a lot of men, and maybe I'm stereotyping, is like the craft beer industry and the distilleries and all that have become really sophisticated and cool now, right? You see it in the marketing. It's a big piece of the modern man, you know, that kind of idea. So even for men and women, mocktails and new drinks are a great option. What are your favorites for those? Like what is there particular recommendations you have when people do that when they go out to just a random restaurant with friends?
Yeah, so if someone's health conscious, almost all of the alcohol-free beers are like once you remove the alcohol, those calorie counts go down so low. They even have like 10, they have 10 calorie IPAs and 0 calorie alcohol-free beers as well. So it's just
It's
incredible.
true.
But for the beers, like Athletic Brewing's a great one. Groovy in Denver is a great one. What is it called? Brewdog is a good one as well. And it's just really exciting. I think what happens is that there's so much in this space. Like every month, a new drink company comes out. So to me, I lived in San Diego for a long time. I was so wrapped up in that craft beer culture and the wine culture as well. And to me, like part of the fun is the discovery, the experimentation, exploring different options. And I think there's more happening in the alcohol free space than in the alcohol
Hmm.
space. So if like you like to try new drinks and see what's new on the market and stuff, you're going to have a lot of fun and you're not going to run out of drinks to try in this new arena. Wild AF, I think, is also really great. That is an alcohol free wine that doesn't add back sugar or any juice. So it's also super low calorie and it's not overly sweet, which I love as well. So that's a really great option.
Wild AF, you said?
Wild
Oh,
AF wine.
I know why you like that one.
Yeah.
That goes
And
well with your brand.
we also have, just new drinks that aren't trying to be, an alcohol-free substitute, but like these nootropics or adaptogen
Mm,
drinks, like Euphorics, for example. And I also say too, like just go to your health food store. Like there's literally
sure.
hundreds and thousands of drinks on the market that aren't, that have some kind of more health quality that aren't alcohol, and that Ritual really takes care of that like that.
So you mentioned nootropics. So you mean there's like ashwagandha drinks you can buy and things like that? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
even aware of that. I should be as a nutrition person, but it's just been kind of I think this is probably true for a lot of people. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's almost like a non-existent space in your brain because you drink. Like you're not looking for the alcohol-free stuff, so you don't realize this whole world's out there. But I imagine it does take a lot of innovation to come up with something that's tolerable and tasty. Well, at least that's the assumption, right? In that space.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of innovation happening. A lot of like the beer they say is almost like on par to par. The wine industry is still working on like really making it better, but it's really exciting to see everything that's coming out in the last few years or so and exploding. And I think really changing the younger generation's perceptions as for alcohol as well, which is pretty amazing.
Now, do you get we touched a little bit on the health effects. Do you get into some of the more details behind alcohol and its effect on fitness outcomes at all, like fat loss, muscle gain, athletic performance, and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, like I'll just tell you my personal story. I was a ballerina growing up, so I always had a smaller frame and was athletic or so. And then I went to college, and I started, drinking a lot and eating things like pizza rolls. And I was wondering by the time I was 21 why I like literally inflated like lots of pounds. And so ever since that age, 22 or so, I literally was on this quest to lose weight. And so literally the whole decade of my 20s, I would try all the diets, I would try cutting this out, doing that, and nothing really seemed to budge, or at least it was a lot of hard work if it did even a little. And so then I ditch alcohol and immediately lose like a few handfuls of pounds just effortlessly. I'm like, what? Like I was trying so
Mhm.
hard. What happened here? And that's what really caused me to look into it. So there's a lot of factors. Obviously, we understand the calories. Everyone understands that you're drinking the calories, and I got that too. But here are some of those secret things that I didn't know about. So first of all, alcohol increases our appetite. It actually signals to the brain to numb that signal that tells us we're full. So, when you're having a few drinks and you're munching on some pretzels or you craving that fast food, it actually signals that you're to the brain, you're not full, keep eating. It also increases your hunger levels because it depletes our nutrients. So I don't know about you, but I don't eat kale for the taste. For me, it's because I'm trying to absorb those healthy nutrients. And alcohol actually blocks our absorption of almost every vitamin and most minerals too, meaning they're just getting flushed out of our body and not absorbed. That also makes us hungrier, right? So it's blocking that. We just touched upon it earlier, but because alcohol body can't store alcohol, it means it's one of the first macronutrients that has to be processed. So because your body's focused on processing alcohol, the fat, the protein, the carbs, they're getting saved for later, which could be in a muffin top, right? And that's because it was like that, my typical habit. This is what I was adding to my week of trying to be healthy, but this like boulder I was literally pushing uphill every week, what was happening. Alcohol also really affects our aerobic fitness. So it increases our heart rate, but without any related physical exertion. So it actually makes the heart have to work harder to pump the oxygen through the blood, and increases heart rate, blood pressure, and the inflammation, I believe, does increase cholesterol, because when you remove alcohol, studies have proven that cholesterol does go down. Mine went down by 50 points. So aerobic fitness
So is this the heart rate? Those are longer term. It's kind of a cumulative thing, or will you see an immediate impact like the next day?
You will definitely, if you have like an Aura ring or some kind of other tracker, you'll definitely see your heart rate up immediately, and obviously too in the long term as well. It's just like it habitually raises it and stuff. And so the aerobic fitness goes down. You're not able to do your best, PRs or runs, because your heart literally isn't as efficient into pumping that blood and having that lower resting heart rate. And then it also decreases our testosterone and increases our estrogen. So for any kind of muscle building or muscle protein synthesis, it's depleting that testosterone that we need to gain that muscle. So those are just some of the things that I was like, whoa, I had no idea all of that was happening. No wonder it was an uphill battle to try to get fit when I was still drinking. And the thing is like we can just ask ourselves, for someone who has more than one and they have two or three or four, are they really that motivated to do all their health and fitness goals the next day? And if they are they almost doing it out of a punishment and a very negative energy, right? Because I remember going to that hot yoga class too, thinking I needed to sweat out those toxins and having just the worst headache and pain because I put myself through that. So it's just amazing to see both intuitively, but also the science underneath it. Like it's so much easier to live a healthy lifestyle when alcohol's not in the picture. And I think just waking up every day in a better mood from both the neurochemical level, the sleep being fantastic, all those things, it just sets us up to also then do the habits and the practices and the routines that instill a healthier lifestyle.
I agree. And it's not like you need alcohol. See, I mean, you need food. You need food. And so it not limits you, but you have to choose from within that choice set. It's funny you talk about how it makes you feel in the morning, because if I drink during the week, and by the way, I'm probably going to start just drinking less, if at all, based on talking to you. So this is fantastic. If I drink during the week, it's the day before my recovery day, right? So it doesn't interfere with my lifting. And I'll even advise clients who have to drink, like, to time it in that way, which logically means I know there's a negative effect, and we all know there's negative effects, just intuitively. But it's great to hear it viscerally explained like that it affects appetite, hunger management, depletes your nutrients, and then raises all these blood markers, because that is counterintuitive to what we're trying to do here. So, okay, then we talked about stress. We talked about, why it's not truly a stress management tool. How about when you work with clients, and we work with primarily women, right, to change their relationship with alcohol, help them understand why it doesn't serve their goals? What does that process look like?
Absolutely. So, first having that awareness that like that possibility, and I think that that's where I was living for a long time, was that possibility that life would be better without alcohol. But like this, how do I ever make that a reality? Like everyone drinks, it's just part of the social fabric and all those kinds of things. So just imagining, I mean, I remember imagining what it would be like to be a Buddhist monk. Why? Because like this Buddhist monk wasn't drinking, he was spending time in contemplation and meditation. Like he was just living these healthy rituals every day. And I fantasized about that because it was so far removed from my like social life or just a normal Western social life. Because I didn't think I could live this healthy lifestyle and, really have boundaries around drinking unless I was like, living this kind of fantasy. So if anyone ever yearns for that kind of healthier lifestyle, that's already kind of a clue that, maybe that alcohol is playing into those negative side effects and just, lowering your mood and so forth. And the thing is that we have to recognize, if you look at it from a really objective level, like imagine I'm an alien, I just come to this planet, I'm learning about our practices. I noticed that, okay, these teenagers, they're maybe 17, 18, 21, whatever, they're getting like this rite of passage around alcohol, right? Like these adolescents, they don't drink, but then as these teenagers come in, they drink, and alcohol is positioned as this tool to be cooler and more rebellious and independent and act like an adult. And then it's ingrained into the social fabric of every single event for the rest of their lives. Like, what a sneaky marketing ploy on that alcohol industry. So it's like this rite of passage we get into, and we have the habit for the rest of our lives. And so it's just kind of like so fascinating to question that, to question what is the role of the alcohol industry? What is the role, like, who benefits when all these people on this planet are drinking? And what beliefs have I come to have in my life, whether I got them from my own experiences, whether I got them from TV. I mean, you can put on any TV show marketing to teenagers, and there'll be so much alcohol on that show. Whether I saw it on Sex and the City or in James Bond's movies, what like beliefs have I absorbed that alcohol either gives me benefits, pleasure, or comfort, or gives me some kind of status too, right? Because there's that, ooh, I'm a fine wine connoisseur. I know my varietals, right? That's status we're looking for in alcohol. That has nothing to do with alcohol itself. So we get these beliefs that really we formed over time about what alcohol does for us in the positive. And how I work with women is to help them change those beliefs, help them actually mine them and debunk them and discover that alcohol is not serving any of those things that you think it's doing. And let's find your own power to feel the feelings you want to feel. I always say it's not the drink someone wants, it's the feeling they believe a drink will give them. So, how can we achieve that feeling without the drink and give the power back to the person? So, for example, let me just make it super clear because I know this is a little nebulous. I at first started drinking because I thought it made me more confident. Super introverted and shy. I was growing up, and then I start drinking alcohol, and oh my God, it's this magical elixir. Now I'm an extrovert. Now I'm the life of the party. Now I can make friends so easily. And so in my mind, slowly, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, I attain this belief that alcohol makes me more confident. And I believe that so strongly. Like, I don't like going to an event and without a drink. I look for the first drink I can get. I continue to reinforce it that I need alcohol to be confident. The thing is that it's not making me more confident over time. It's actually deteriorating my confidence. So first of all, there's actually times I've embarrassed myself on alcohol, right? And there's just the little things like having wine stains on your teeth or saying something a little out of character or just waking up ashamed the next day of drinking a little too much than you wanted to. But there's also this other subconscious phenomenon of every single time I reach for a drink when I'm socializing to be more confident, I'm telling my subconscious, Carolina, you're not interesting. Nobody wants to
Hmm.
talk to you. You have nothing good to say, but here, have this drink and you'll be so much better. And just telling myself that I'm not worthy as myself as I am. And so by the time I'm 30, when I'm reevaluating the relationship I have with alcohol, my confidence is so low. Alcohol never was raising it over time, right? It was this little band aid that just really didn't work. And I have to really kind of nix this belief that alcohol makes me more confident. It actually makes me insecure. It's lowered my self esteem over time. It's made me not be able to trust myself completely. And so, yes, do I have to work on confidence? Is this a new skill that I have to build in my alcohol free lifestyle? Sure, because I never practiced it before. A lot of people who drink regularly literally haven't practiced socializing without alcohol ever, unless it's like at work or something, because it's just so instilled into us. So I learned to practice it. I learned to put myself out there. I gained the competence first to just get comfortable in my skin and recognize I don't need a drink to be confident. That's something I can build within myself. So now instead of telling my subconscious I need something outside of me in order to feel confident, I've now built that within myself and feel so much more strong and self love because of that. I've nixed that belief out of my subconscious, and now I believe something completely different. Alcohol was making me insecure. It's only myself that will make me feel more confident. Now, we probably have like 20 to 30 big beliefs like that in our subconscious around alcohol. So each one of them needs that kind of a process to change the mindset. But here's what's brilliant about it is that once you completely change those beliefs and that mindset, the desire goes away. Because if you subconsciously
Sure.
don't believe there's any benefit or comfort or pleasure or whatever you were attaching to alcohol in the positive, the desire goes away. I mean, I used to smoke cigarettes in college, as a lot of people do. You couldn't pay me today to smoke a cigarette. Like, that's gross, right? And that's almost a kind of feeling we can get to with alcohol if we do this mindset process of it's not something you can't have or aren't allowed to have. It's something you don't want.
Yeah, there's a lot there too. There's a lot of reframing going on, which I love. And one of the maybe a parallel to that is how when someone starts to change up the way they eat for their goals, let's say it's more protein and more vegetables because they need the fiber and so on. They're not cutting things out; they're just adding things in, to the positive, and all of a sudden they realize their body feels great. And they realize it was because, once they start reintroducing these things that they've cut out inadvertently, that it starts to make them feel this way again, and they don't need them anymore. When you talk about the 20 big ideas or 20 big social constructs, where does that come from? First of all, is this just your own list you've developed over time, or is it based on some research or evidence? And then I'm assuming not everybody has issues with all 20, or do they? Or is it usually a few that you want to prioritize or target?
Absolutely. Super unique to people, and these are just like the most common ones I've heard time and
Sure.
time and time and time again. So number one is like alcohol relaxes me, right?
There you go.
And not only do we get that because we think it happens through our personal experience, but we have advertisements and all this stuff telling us to pour a glass after, work or so. And then there's so many other ones like normal adults must drink, or I would be a problem if I didn't drink. Like I would be labeled with a problem, all the way to alcohol makes vacations more fun, or alcohol makes Friday nights more exciting. There's just so many different ones, but they're oftentimes related to how alcohol either brings us down in the sense of like decompression, relaxation. Alcohol brings us up. It excites me. It makes things more fun. It makes something to look
Hmm.
forward to, or something to do with the social element, which either could be, everyone else is doing it, or it makes me more confident, or eases my social nerves, or something like that. So there's lots of different variety of them, but usually those are the three kind of schools of where they come from. And some beliefs also come like really deeply negative beliefs we have about ourselves as well, and we're using alcohol to numb those and not have to work through and process them. But in that moment, we also do think that alcohol helps us solve our pain. So even that is another belief. Alcohol helps me solve pain, right? So a lot of these things can be super subconscious. We wouldn't actually verbally say a lot of these things. So I just like to ask people, why do you like to drink? And
Mhm.
from there, we can oftentimes kind of distill out what those beliefs are.
Yeah. So, and then as far as the social situations, you talked about alternatives, but what's the general advice for people listening who are just maybe tonight they're thinking of going out and drinking's going to be there? Like, what are the steps that they should go through mentally, potentially, to start changing their behavior in the way that would serve them better?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone who's already embarking on a healthy lifestyle, like you're choosing to do things differently than maybe the general populace because you value your health so much. And I'm guessing it makes you feel very proud. I'm guessing you're proud of your workouts, you're proud of your eating habits, you're proud of the steps you're taking to live your life aligned with your health. And if we can see not drinking in the same light, that it's not something that we're doing that makes us the odd one out or the weirdo, we're actually the one who is aligning their life to their health and values. There's a study that came out that showed that over 52% of Americans actually wish that they drank less or not at all. And
Hmm.
so we all have that desire, or not at least a lot of us do, and yet it's not getting acted upon. So when you go out and are the only one not drinking with your friends or family or whoever, you have to know that secretly, at least half of the people there wish that they were doing what you were doing. It's kind of like, imagine if you were to go out with a friend and they ordered a fast food meal and you got the healthy salad. The person who got the fast food meal is a little like, I probably should have done that. I'm a little
Yeah.
jealous or a little, whatever,
Insecure.
envious
Yeah. Yeah.
about them. So like you can actually go from being what's called the odd one out into the leader, into the role model, into the inspirer. And there's so many incredible role models out there who don't drink that you would never even question about him. For example, Tony Robbins doesn't drink. No
Yeah.
one's going to go around to Tony Robbins asking him why he's not drinking, or come on, just join us, buddy. Like he would laugh that off so fast. And you can find examples of that, of just these movers and shakers and people who really align their life not only to their values but also to their goals and dreams, where it's just like, why is there room or time for alcohol? It makes absolutely no sense. And then you can use that same pride that you use to achieve your other goals, or healthy living standards, and kind of, you don't have to proclaim it like a preacher with a pulpit or something, but you just kind of live with that energy. So instead of being kind of embarrassed or intimidated by this idea that you're not drinking out with public, you're like wearing it with pride, and
Yes.
that piques curiosity. And you never know that ripple effect you could create in your social circles, because trust me, you're not the only one questioning it.
You speak so much to me, and probably a lot of the listeners. I love the idea of pride and excitement and owning it out there, because the courage to be an outlier, it's something concept we talk about a lot. to the point where you realize that being an outlier in society and almost anything probably means you're doing something right. It generally goes that way. And that secretly many people want to be in your same shoes. So we talk about support systems for health, right? When people try to sabotage your goals, and oftentimes it's out of insecurity because they really want to be like you. Why aren't you staying with the tribe, staying with the crowd? So when it does come time to do this, what about the closest people to you, right? Your friends, family, who are still drinking, and you have to have some conversation potentially, or is it more of a matter of, like you said, walking around with your chest high, pride, just making the decision and not really having to explain yourself so much as just saying, like, here's the choice I'm making. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts around the verbalizing that?
Well, obviously it depends on what, unique personal relationship you have with each person, but something so easy to say is I'm taking a break and I feel amazing. Who's going to argue with that? Oh, here, have a drink and start feeling shitty again.
Got
Right?
it.
So it's like we don't have to make it this huge permanent thing at first, and because we might not know where it's going to go, right? It's kind of hard to determine. Sometimes it's scary to say something more like final, like, oh, I'm not drinking anymore, or I quit, because you don't know where it's going to turn out either. So explaining that you're taking a break and you're feeling amazing, or you're taking a break to improve your health, I mean, those are all the truth and all very inspiring. And it can also kind of like, take the pressure off other people. As you're getting into it though, like I led with the benefits. So for example, my closest relationship was with my husband, and we definitely shared drinking together. It was kind of our pastime. It was date night. It was what we did on the weekends, And so to just one day be like, I'm never drinking again would have probably been a little like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So instead, obviously, I took a break and I started sharing breadcrumbs with him. I was like, you know what? Oh my gosh, I slept so well without drinking the night before. Or, oh my God, I'm feeling so much happier. Or like, I feel so much more motivated to go hiking with you. And maybe even showing him more love and more quality time, so that when it came down to like whether or not I was going to go back to alcohol, he already totally got it. He already saw how much better this was for me and how much positive, examples I was sharing with him about how much better I feel. And ultimately, he wanted me to be happy, right? And in those places where the person maybe is, like you said, a little bit more insecure or just not reacting as positively, first of all, we hold that mirror up to the other person. So it might be that they are a little insecure about their own
Mhm.
drinking habits, but it also could be deeper. It could be like they're scared that they're going to lose you,
Sure.
especially if that was such a like time, like a pastime together. And for that, especially for like romantic relationships, I think it's really important to still devote the quality time and the bonding together. Just find new ways of doing it. So, for example, instead of date night at the brewery, my husband and I signed up for a half marathon and did Friday night runs together. Like, what a cool way to bond and elevate our relationship to the next level. And it didn't like tear us apart, it got us so much closer.
So great. I love it. And honestly, your advice could apply to anything that you are, making a choice to improve your health with. I imagine, I'm strength training and I feel amazing, I'm taking a break and I feel amazing. So I love that. And then alternative activities and alternative drinks and all these things are definitely the way to go. So to respect your time, I do like to ask this of all guests, is there any question you wish I had asked, and what is your answer?
Oh, sure. Well, if this was a lot for anyone and you want to like kind of process it and mull it over and get some really good guidance, do check out my book, Euphoric Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You, because basically almost everything we talked about is in that book, and you'll get a lot of tips and guidance and a weekly plan to even follow to take a break from alcohol. So just be sure to check that out.
Check the book out. And my final question was going to be, where can listeners learn more about you? Do you want them to go to the book or somewhere else?
Yeah, so you can go to euphoricaf.com, and that's my main website. We have our programs, we run group programs. We also have retreats around the world, which is really fun. And I also certify new alcohol free women who are passionate about sharing this with other people and helping other people change their lives. So if anyone's looking for a career change or just something to motivate them to help other people too, that's an incredible option. And then you can find my book at, Euphoric and Amazon or euphoricbook.com. And then I'm also pretty active on Instagram. So if you want to shoot me a question or, share anything with me, please feel free to. I'm at euphoric.af.
And great content on there for those watching or listening. Definitely put those links in the show notes and check them out. This was really enlightening, super valuable. I love when I have guests on where I personally learn a lot, because I know the listener is going to learn a lot and take action from this and improve their lives for the better. So Karolina, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.